aliens begged for mercy, Deathworlders answered with firepower. The crystalline spires of Zephyria gleamed under the twin suns, their prismatic surfaces casting rainbow patterns across the floating gardens, where the ethereals had cultivated peace for over 4 millennia. High Counselor Lirelai moved through the meditation chambers with grace that defied gravity, her translucent form shimmering like captured starlight. The ethereals had transcended physical warfare eons ago, existing as beings of pure energy who resolve conflicts through harmonic resonance and emotional synthesis. "The morning confluence proceeds beautifully," whispered Harmony Keeper Vex, his melodic voice resonating through the crystal network that connected every ethereal mind. "The outer colonies report perfect synchronization with the galactic peace frequency." Lirelai paused at the great observation dome, watching their terraforming vessels tend to barren worlds, transforming them into gardens of impossible beauty. 4,000 years of perfect harmony, Vex. Sometimes I wonder if we have forgotten what darkness looks like. The irony of her words would haunt her within hours. The first disruption came as a discordant screech that shattered crystal formations across 3 continents. Emergency harmonics flooded the network as Outer Colony Serenity 7 transmitted its final message through waves of pure terror. They consume consciousness itself." The voice of Colony Shepherd Axiom crackled through dimensional static. "Not just matter, not just energy, they devour the very essence of thought. The children's minds went dark first, then the elders. I can feel my own awareness being eaten from the inside. They call themselves the Void Devourers, and they..." Silence. Complete, absolute silence from a colony that had housed 12 million souls. High Counselor Lirelai's form flickered with distress as she addressed the emergency conclave. "In all our recorded history, we have never encountered a species that feeds on consciousness itself. Our diplomatic protocols assume rational beings capable of communication. Surely there must be some misunderstanding," offered Peaceweaver Drift, his form glowing with desperate hope. "Perhaps their method of communication is simply aggressive?" The answer came when their most advanced diplomatic vessel, the Harmony's Embrace Asterisk, was sent to make contact with the approaching fleet. The ship's consciousness recorder captured every moment of the encounter in crystalline clarity that would torment ethereal minds for generations. Ambassador Flux, their most experienced diplomat who had negotiated peace between gas giants and stellar phenomena, transmitted his greeting in pure thought forms that transcended language barriers. The response was immediate and horrifying. The Void Devourers didn't just ignore the communication, they consumed it. They fed on the thoughts themselves, growing stronger from the very act of peaceful contact. Ambassador Flux's screams echoed through the consciousness network as his mind was systematically devoured, leaving behind only empty shell of matter. "They are not evil," Lirelai announced to the terrified conclave, her voice carrying harmonics of absolute despair. "Evil implies choice, implies consciousness, capable of moral decision. These beings are something far worse. They are hunger given form, a cosmic cancer that spreads by consuming the very thing that makes us who we are." Subcoan. The evacuations began immediately, but the ethereals faced a problem their peaceful nature had never prepared them for. Their ships were designed for exploration and beauty, not speed or defense. Their technology focused on creation and harmony, not destruction or escape. Refugee streams flooded the inner systems, carrying survivors whose minds had been partially consumed. The reports were consistent and terrifying. The Void Devourers struck without warning, consuming the consciousness of entire populations while leaving their bodies to wander as empty husks. 12 systems consumed in 6 days, reported Data Weaver Prism, his usually calm demeanor shattered by the impossible mathematics of extinction. "At their current rate of expansion, they will reach Zephyria in 18 days. Our evacuation ships can carry perhaps 3% of our population." "What of our allies?" asked Lirelai desperately. "The singing crystals of Melodia? The light dancers of Radiant Reach?" Prism's form dimmed. "The crystals went silent 4 days ago. Long-range sensors show their worlds empty, still intact, still beautiful, but devoid of consciousness. As for the light dancers, their final transmission was a warning to run beyond the galactic rim and never return. In the depths of space, the void devourers moved like a tide of living darkness. Their ships were not built, they were grown from consumed consciousness, twisted geometries that hurt to perceive directly. Each vessel pulsed with the stolen thoughts of 1,000 civilizations, their hulls inscribed with the final screams of entire species. The creatures themselves defied description. They existed in the spaces between dimensions, feeding on the quantum foam of consciousness itself. When they manifested in real space, reality seemed to recoil from their presence, space-time warping around their impossible forms. Desperation drove the ethereals to attempt what they had never done before. They tried to fight. The results were catastrophic. Their harmony-based weapons, designed to pacify and calm, only made the void devourers stronger. The beings fed on the peaceful thoughts that powered ethereal technology, growing more powerful with each attempted defense. "We are not warriors," admitted Warshaper Quantum, a title that was purely ceremonial until this moment. "Our entire civilization is built on the premise that consciousness is sacred, that violence is the last resort of the desperate. We have no weapons that can harm beings who grow stronger from our very nature." High Counselor Lirelei made a decision that would have been unthinkable mere days earlier. She authorized the activation of the deep space monitoring arrays, ancient devices that their predecessors had built to listen for signs of other consciousness in the universe. "Search for any signal, any sign of intelligence that might help us," she commanded. "Cast our net as wide as space itself. Somewhere in this galaxy, there must be someone who can fight what we cannot." The arrays worked for 72 hours straight, scanning frequencies that had been dormant for millennia. Most systems they detected were already dark, consumed by the advancing tide of emptiness. But in the deepest reaches of space, in a system so distant it barely registered on their star charts, they found something that made their consciousness network tremble, with a mixture of hope and terror. "High Counselor," whispered Scanner Flux, his voice barely audible through the harmonic network, "I have found something, a system our databases classify as Terminal Hazard Zone Omega, a designation reserved for regions where consciousness cannot survive." The system was labeled simply Sol, Third Planet, Earth, classification, Deathworld Absolute. "The readings are disturbing," Flux continued, his form flickering with confused fear. "The planet registers as completely hostile to all known forms of life. Violent weather, toxic atmosphere, gravity that would crush most species, and temperatures that fluctuate beyond survivable ranges. Yet, there are signs of not just life, but advanced civilization." Lirelei felt her consciousness recoil from the very idea. What kind of beings could evolve on such a world? Unknown, but High Counselor, their technology signatures suggest they are militaristic. Their orbital platforms are covered in what appear to be weapon systems. Their civilization seems to be built around the concept of organized violence. The debate that followed would have been unthinkable before the crisis. The ethereals had spent 4 millennia believing that consciousness was fundamentally peaceful, that any intelligent species would naturally evolve toward harmony. The idea of contacting beings who had developed weapons was antithetical to everything they believed. "Perhaps," suggested Harmony Keeper, Vex quietly, "beings who evolved on a world trying to kill them every day might know something about fighting things that want to consume them." Lirelei made the hardest decision in ethereal history. She authorized first contact with the Deathworlders. The message was crafted with careful precision, transmitted on frequencies the mysterious beings used for their own communications. It contained the ethereal language matrix, star charts showing the location of their worlds, and detailed information about the Void Devourer threat. Most importantly, it contained their desperate plea. "To any consciousness that can hear this transmission, we are the ethereals of Zephyria. Our civilization has existed in peace for 4,000 years. We have never known violence, never sought to harm another thinking being. Now we face extinction from creatures that consume consciousness itself. We are dying. Our children's minds are being devoured. If anyone in this galaxy possesses the knowledge to fight what cannot be reasoned with, we beg you, help us. We offer everything we have, everything we are, in exchange for salvation. The transmission raced across the galaxy toward the distant system where impossible beings had somehow learned to survive on a world that should have killed them. On Earth, the Deep Space Monitoring Station. Titan 7 picked up the alien signal at 1437 GMT. Specialist Kira Voss was reviewing routine electromagnetic interference when every detection system in the facility began screaming simultaneous alerts. "What the hell?" Voss muttered, her coffee forgotten as she stared at the unprecedented readings. The signal was clearly artificial, highly complex, and unlike anything in their xenocontact protocols. Within minutes, the transmission was being analyzed by Earth's most advanced quantum computers and xenobiological experts. Dr. Alexei Reyes, head of the Extraterrestrial Intelligence Division, was pulled from his research and rushed to the Global Defense Command Center deep beneath the Swiss Alps. "This is it," Dr. Reyes breathed, his hands trembling as he reviewed the preliminary translation algorithms. "First contact, and they're not invading, they're begging for help." Fleet Admiral Zara Cross arrived at the command center within 2 hours, her weathered face grim as she studied the decoded alien message. The transmission had been broken down into its component parts: star charts, biological data, and most critically, tactical information about an enemy that consumed consciousness itself. "Show me what we're dealing with," Cross commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had fought in the Martian Independence War and the Titan mining conflicts. Dr. Reyes activated the holographic display system. The species calls themselves ethereals. They're energy beings, completely pacifistic, and they've maintained a civilization based on perfect harmony for 4,000 years. The enemy they're facing. He paused, accessing the next data packet. They call them void devourers. These things don't just kill, they consume consciousness itself. "How long do they have in them?" asked General Thorne Blackwood, Cross's second in command. "According to their timeline, maybe 15 days before their homeworld is overrun," Dr. Reyes replied. "Admiral, they're facing complete extinction, and they're so desperate they're asking for help from beings they classify as violent Deathworlders." Cross studied the star charts the ethereals had provided. The distance was enormous, but not impossible with their newest Alcubierre drives. "What do we know about these ethereals? Can we trust them?" "Everything in their transmissions suggests complete honesty," Dr. Reyes said. "They've included detailed information about their biology, their history, their weaknesses. Either they're incredibly naive or they're so desperate they're willing to trust complete strangers with everything." Commander Jack Sterling, recently returned from the Outer Colony's security operations, leaned forward. "Sir, what if this is some kind of trap? What if these ethereals are working with these void devourers?" Dr. Reyes shook his head firmly. "The quantum resonance patterns in their message indicate genuine terror and desperation. You can't fake that level of existential panic across species barriers. These people are dying, and they know it." Admiral Cross made her decision with the cold efficiency that had made her Earth's most respected military leader. "Signal the Global Defense Council. Emergency session in 1 hour. We're going to war." The next 96 hours witnessed the largest military mobilization in human history. From the orbital shipyards around Luna to the military bases in the asteroid belt, every available warship was recalled and prepared for deployment. The human fleet was a testament to their species' violent evolution. Massive dreadnoughts bristling with quantum cannons and antimatter missiles, sleek destroyer classes designed for high-speed strikes, and carrier vessels loaded with fighter squadrons whose pilots had trained for exactly this kind of unknown conflict. The weapons specialists worked around the clock to prepare for an enemy unlike anything in human databases. "What are we facing?" asked Colonel Phoenix Reaper, commander of the elite Marine Corps division. "Unknown hostiles that feed on consciousness," General Blackwood replied. "They ignore communication attempts and consume entire civilizations. Treat them like a sentient virus that fights back." The modification of human armaments took on an almost religious fervor. Quantum disruptors were redesigned for maximum neural disruption, plasma weapons were calibrated to target exotic matter configurations, and new experimental weapons were developed based on theoretical physics and pure desperation. Dr. Reyes briefed the command staff on their new allies. The ethereals are everything humans are not. They evolved on a paradise world with no predators, no natural disasters, and unlimited resources. They've never fought a war, never killed for any reason, and don't understand violence as anything but a theoretical concept. Great, muttered Commander Sterling. We're protecting pacifist philosophers. We're protecting people who chose to be better than their instincts, Dr. Reyes corrected sharply. They could have developed weapons, could have built armies, but they chose peace instead. That makes them worth every life we might lose saving them. Admiral Cross reviewed the fleet manifest. 342 warships, 75,000 Marines, and enough firepower to sterilize a continent. Is this enough? We don't know what we're facing, General Blackwood admitted, but if it exists in our reality, we can kill it. And if it doesn't exist in our reality, we'll drag it here and kill it anyway. The hyperspace navigation proved to be the most challenging aspect of the mission. The ethereals had provided star charts based on consciousness mapping rather than traditional spatial coordinates. Human navigators worked frantically to adapt their systems to alien methodologies. This is incredible, said navigation specialist River Park, staring at the quantum pathway projections. Their understanding of space-time is based on consciousness density rather than gravitational fields. They're mapping the galaxy by the thoughts that exist within it. How did such a peaceful species develop this kind of technology? Asked Admiral Cross. They had 4,000 years of peace to focus on exploration instead of warfare, Dr. Reyes explained. While we were perfecting ways to kill each other more efficiently, they were learning to navigate by following the dreams of distant stars. The final briefing took place in the war room of the flagship Righteous Fury *. Every ship captain, marine commander, and department head attended either in person or by quantum link. Admiral Cross stood before the assembled officers, her presence commanding absolute attention. People, we are about to do something unprecedented. We're going to war for a species we've never met, in defense of worlds we've never seen, against an enemy that exists outside our understanding of reality. The room was silent as Cross continued. The ethereals asked for help, and we're going to give it to them. Not because we expect payment, not because we want their technology, but because that's what humanity does. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. Commander Sterling raised his hand. Sir, what if we can't win? What if these void devourers are beyond our ability to fight? Cross's expression hardened into something that would have made the ethereals recoil in terror. Then we make them pay for every thought they consume, every consciousness they devour. We show them that there are some species in this galaxy that don't go quietly into the dark. The final preparations were completed as the fleet assembled in formation. Supply ships loaded with experimental ammunition took their positions, while hospital ships prepared for casualties that everyone hoped would be minimal but expected to be devastating. Dr. Reyes sent a reply to the ethereals using their own consciousness-based communication protocols. The message was simple, but carried the full weight of human determination. Help is coming. Hold on. Earth does not abandon its allies. As the massive human warfleet activated their Alcubierre drives and disappeared into the twisted space between dimensions, Earth's leaders could only hope they had sent enough force to make a difference. They had no way of knowing that they were about to introduce the galaxy to the concept of human warfare, or that the peaceful ethereals were about to learn why Earth was classified as a death world. The journey to ethereal space would take 14 days. The Void Devourers would reach Zephyria in 16 days. The race was on. The human warfleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zephyria system like a thunderstorm materializing from clear skies. Commander Sterling's reconnaissance ships had arrived first, their sensors immediately detecting the massive consciousness disruption signatures moving toward the inner planets. Contact confirmed, Sterling reported over the fleet communications. Multiple hostile entities approaching Zephyria. They match the descriptions provided by the ethereals. But the reality is worse. Admiral Cross studied the tactical display from the bridge of the Righteous Fury *. The Void Devourers were unlike anything in human military databases. They appeared to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, their forms shifting between states of matter and energy. Sensors had difficulty maintaining locks on targets that seemed to phase in and out of reality itself. "How many?" Cross asked. "Estimated 89 major entities. Thousands of smaller manifestations," came the reply. "They're maintaining a formation that suggests hive mind intelligence, moving at steady velocity toward the planet." On Zephyria, High Counselor Lirelai stood in the emergency command center, watching the long-range consciousness detectors with growing despair. The Void Devourer's advanced scouts had been detected 8 hours ago and were already consuming the outer defensive satellite's AI systems. "Still no response from the Deathworlders," reported consciousness specialist Echo, his harmonic tones heavy with defeat. "Perhaps they could not understand our message. Or perhaps beings from such a hostile world saw no benefit in helping peaceful strangers," suggested Harmony Keeper Vex, his form flickering with barely contained terror. Lyrely was about to respond when every sensor in the chamber exploded with new contacts. Hundreds of discrete consciousness signatures materialized throughout the system, far too organized to be natural phenomena and far too aggressive to be anything the ethereals had ever encountered. "What is happening?" Lirelai demanded, her consciousness recoiling from the violent thoughts that seemed to radiate from the new arrivals. Echo's form brightened with amazement and horror. "Ships, High Counselor, hundreds of ships just materialized throughout our system. The consciousness signatures are intense, focused, built for violence in ways I cannot fully comprehend, and they're broadcasting on the frequency we use to contact the Death World." The first transmission came through in heavily accented but understandable ethereal harmonic language. "Zephyria Prime, this is Admiral Cross of the United Earth Defense Force. We received your message. The cavalry has arrived." Lirelai felt her consciousness nearly dissipate from pure shock. They came. The beings from the Death World actually crossed the galaxy to help complete strangers. The human fleet wasted no time in tactical positioning. While the ethereals watched in a mixture of awe and terror, the Earth ships spread throughout the system in a complex formation that made no sense to peaceful minds, but demonstrated clear military genius to anyone who understood warfare. Commander Sterling's advance force moved to intercept the Void Devourer scouts. The first engagement began when 3 of the smaller entities detected the human ships and moved to investigate, their forms shifting through dimensions as they approached. "Unknown vessels," Sterling transmitted, though he knew the gesture was futile. "You are in violation of ethereal space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The Void Devourers responded as they always did to communication attempts. They tried to consume the thoughts behind the transmission. What they found instead was something they had never encountered before. A consciousness that had been forged by millions of years of evolutionary pressure, hardened by constant conflict, and absolutely immune to pacification. Sterling's mind was like trying to digest a quantum razor blade. The Void Devourer that attempted to consume his thoughts recoiled in something that might have been pain if it possessed a nervous system capable of such sensations. "Hostile intent confirmed," Sterling announced to his squadron. "All ships, weapons free. Show them how Earth fights." The battle lasted exactly 8 minutes and 23 seconds. The Void Devourers, which had swept aside every form of resistance they had encountered in their march across the galaxy, met something they had never faced before: coordinated military violence from a species that had evolved specifically to survive in impossible conditions. Human quantum cannons tore through multidimensional forms with bullets designed to exist in several reality states simultaneously. Plasma weapons superheated exotic matter until it collapsed into normal spacetime, where it could be destroyed conventionally. Fighter squadrons swarmed the larger entities like angry wasps, their weapons targeting dimensional anchor points with surgical precision. The Void Devourers tried to adapt, their forms shifting to states that should have been immune to physical damage. But human weapons had been designed to kill other humans, beings who could think, plan, and adapt in real time. Against mindless predators that relied on overwhelming force, they were devastatingly effective. When the engagement ended, 3 Void Devourer scouts had been reduced to dissipating energy clouds. The human ships had suffered minor damage to 2 vessels and 0 casualties. Well, Commander Sterling reported to Admiral Cross, his voice carrying a satisfaction that would have terrified the Ethereals. They die like everything else when you hit them with enough concentrated violence. On Zephyria, the Ethereal Council watched the battle recordings in stunned silence. They had seen destruction before in their historical archives. But this was different. The humans had not just defeated the Void Devourers, they had obliterated them with casual efficiency. "How do they fight so effectively?" whispered Data Weaver Prism, his consciousness flickering with confused admiration. "They are from a death world," Lirelai replied, though she was beginning to understand what that truly meant. "They evolved to survive where nothing else could. Fighting is as natural to them as harmony is to us." Admiral Cross requested permission to dock with the Ethereal Council station, and Lirelai granted it immediately. As the massive human flagship approached, the Ethereals could see its battle scars from previous conflicts and the weapons that covered every surface like metallic scales. The first meeting between humans and Ethereals took place in the council chamber, hastily modified to accommodate beings who had evolved under different atmospheric conditions. Admiral Cross entered with Dr. Reyes and a small honor guard, their presence somehow filling the peaceful room with an energy the Ethereals had never experienced. Cross was exactly what the Ethereals expected from a Deathworld inhabitant: tall, muscular, with scars visible on her hands and face. Her eyes constantly scanned for threats even in the most peaceful environment, but her voice was gentle when she spoke. "High Counselor Lirelai, I am Admiral Cross. We came as quickly as we could." Lirelai studied the human commander. Despite her obviously dangerous nature, there was something in her expression that reminded her of her own people's compassion. "Admiral Cross, why did you come? We are strangers to you. Our worlds are far from yours." Cross was quiet for a moment, considering her words. "Because you asked for help, and it was the right thing to do." Dr. Reyes stepped forward, his scientific mind fascinated by their first alien contact. "High Counselor, we need to understand this enemy. Everything you can tell us about the Void Devourers will help us protect your people." The next several hours were spent in detailed briefings. The Ethereals provided consciousness maps showing the Void Devourers' advance, quantum biological data they had gathered from survivors, and tactical information about the entity's feeding patterns. In return, the humans shared their military assessment and battle plans. The cultural differences became immediately apparent. "You plan to attack their source dimensions?" Lirelai asked, confused. "But surely they can be reasoned with if we understand their true nature?" General Blackwood, who had joined the meeting by quantum link, shook his head. "High Counselor, these entities are predators. They don't negotiate, they don't compromise, and they won't stop until every conscious being in the galaxy is consumed. The only language they understand is force." "But killing them," Harmony Keeper Vex protested, his form flickering with distress. "Is necessary for your survival," Cross finished. "I understand this is difficult for your people. You've built a civilization based on peace and cooperation, but sometimes peace can only be preserved through violence." Lirelai struggled with the concept. "And your people are willing to commit this violence for strangers?" Cross nodded. "That's what we do. Earth is a dangerous world that taught us to fight for survival. But it also taught us to protect those who cannot protect themselves." Dr. Reyes presented the tactical overview. The Void Devourers' main force would reach Zephyria in 12 days. Human intelligence suggested they had multiple staging dimensions and were using consumed consciousness to create new predator entities in exponential numbers. "We won't wait for them to reach your homeworld," Cross announced. "We'll meet them in deep space and destroy them before they can threaten any more of your people." As the briefing continued, the Ethereals began to understand that they had contacted more than just another alien species. They had reached out to apex predators from a world so hostile it had forged them into perfect warriors, who had somehow retained enough compassion to travel across the galaxy to save complete strangers. Lirelai looked at Admiral Cross with a mixture of awe and terror. "What kind of world creates beings like you?" Cross's expression grew distant. "A world that tried to kill us every day for millions of years, but it also taught us that some things are worth fighting for." The human war machine moved with a precision that amazed and terrified the ethereal observers. Within hours of the initial briefing, Admiral Cross had divided her fleet into 9 battle groups, each assigned to eliminate a different Void Devourer dimensional anchor point. "We don't fight defensively," Cross explained to Lorelei as they watched the deployment from the Council Station. "Defensive warfare allows the enemy to choose when and where to fight. We're going to take that choice away from them." The first target was the Nexus Dimension, where the Void Devourers had established a major consciousness processing center. General Blackwood led the assault personally, commanding experimental ships equipped with dimensional warfare capabilities that the Ethereals had never imagined could exist. "Beginning dimensional breach," Blackwood reported over the communications link. "Initial scans show massive Void Devourer presence across 17 reality layers, commencing reality denial protocols." Lorelei watched the tactical display with growing horror as human weapons tore holes in the fabric of space-time itself. "General Blackwood, there may be surviving consciousness fragments in that dimension, beings who are still partially alive." "Negative, High Counselor," came the reply. "Bio-quantum scans show no recoverable consciousness signatures. Everything in this dimension has been consumed. We're simply sterilizing the infection." The ground assault that followed revealed the true nature of human military doctrine. Marines dropped into hostile dimensions in armored suits that could exist across multiple reality states simultaneously. They fought in conditions that would have dissolved most species' consciousness within minutes, their weapons carving through exotic enemies like chainsaws through tissue paper. Commander Sterling's Special Forces conducted simultaneous raids on Void Devourer supply lines throughout the occupied dimensions. His ships moved like phantoms through folded space, appearing without warning to destroy the slower transport entities that carried consumed consciousness between feeding grounds. "Target acquired," Sterling reported from the Sigma Paradox dimension. "Massive consciousness transport escorted by 18 Predator-class entities, moving to intercept." The engagement was swift and brutal. Human ships used their superior tactics and coordination to separate the escorts from their target, then focused their dimensional weapons on the massive transport entity. When it died, the consumed consciousness it carried was released back into the quantum foam, denying the Void Devourers the resources they needed to create new predators. Dr. Reyes worked frantically with ethereal scientists to develop more effective weapons against the Void Devourers' unique biology. The gentle aliens were horrified by the concept of consciousness-based warfare, but their survival instincts finally overcame their peaceful nature. "We've identified a critical weakness," Dr. Reyes announced during a joint research session. "The Void Devourers share a quantum-entangled consciousness network. A targeted quantum virus could disrupt their coordination and cause system-wide cascade failures." Harmony Keeper, Vex, the ethereal scientist assisting with the research, stared at the consciousness weapon designs with revulsion. "This virus, it would cause immense suffering as their awareness fragments." "Yes," Dr. Reyes replied without hesitation, "but it would save millions of innocent lives. Sometimes the choice isn't between good and evil, but between terrible and catastrophic." The human fleet's advance was relentless. Dimension after dimension fell to their assault. The Void Devourers' simple strategy of overwhelming consumption proved useless against human tactical superiority. The entities had never faced an enemy that could adapt, coordinate, and plan multiple moves ahead while fighting in conditions that would destroy most forms of consciousness. General Blackwood's Marines perfected the art of dimensional warfare against the Void Devourers. They used quantum flamethrowers to burn through exotic matter formations, dimensional charges to collapse unstable reality pockets, and orbital strikes to eliminate large concentrations of enemies. The fighting was brutal and took place in spaces that existed between thoughts and dreams. "Sector 7 cleared," reported Colonel Reaper from the surface of a consumed consciousness world. "Void Devourer resistance eliminated. Beginning sweep for recoverable awareness fragments." The search for survivors always yielded the same heartbreaking results. The Void Devourers consumed everything conscious they encountered, leaving behind only empty quantum shells of once thriving civilizations. But the humans pressed on, their determination fueled by the knowledge that every day they delayed meant more innocent minds being devoured. Commander Sterling's intelligence gathering revealed the scope of the Void Devourers' expansion. They had consumed 23 different civilizations over the past 2 centuries, each time following the same pattern. Overwhelming assault, complete consumption of consciousness, then movement to the next target. They're not intelligent in the way we understand it, Sterling reported to Admiral Cross. They operate more like a biological program designed for one purpose: consume and replicate. They can't be reasoned with because they lack the consciousness necessary for reason. The human fleet's reputation began to spread through the occupied dimensions. Void Devourers that had never shown fear or hesitation began to retreat when human ships appeared. The Predators had encountered something they had never faced before, a species more dangerous than they were. The Void Devourers are adapting, Admiral Cross observed as she studied the latest battle reports. They're beginning to avoid direct confrontation with our forces. Then we adapt faster, General Blackwood replied. That's what humans do. The breakthrough came when Commander Sterling's scouts discovered the location of the Void Devourer's primary consciousness processing facility, a massive structure that existed in the spaces between dimensions, where the entities converted consumed awareness into new predator forms. This is their weakness, Cross announced to her commanders. They need this facility to maintain their reproduction cycle. If we destroy it, we cripple their ability to replace losses. The assault on the processing facility required a different approach. The structure was heavily defended and existed in dimensional spaces with reality distortion levels that would kill most species instantly. But humans had learned to fight in hostile environments long before they reached the stars. Dimensional distortion levels are 12 times fatal dose for most consciousness-based life forms, reported the science officer aboard the Righteous Fury *. Good thing we're not most consciousness-based life forms, Cross replied. All ships, prepare for assault. We're going to teach these things what it means to threaten innocent people. The Ethereals watched from their safe distance as the human fleet prepared for what could be their most dangerous battle yet. Lyrily found herself focusing her consciousness on ancient harmonies she had not accessed in centuries, sending protective thoughts toward the strange beings from the death world who had traveled so far to save her people. Why do they risk so much for us? She asked Dr. Reyes, who had remained on Zephyria to coordinate the research effort. Dr. Reyes looked up from his consciousness weapon calculations, his eyes tired but determined. Because that's who we are, High Counselor. Humans don't abandon those who need help, even if it costs us everything. It's why we survived our death world, and it's why we'll defeat the Void Devourers. The final assault was about to begin, and the galaxy would learn whether the apex predators of Earth could triumph over a threat that had consumed the consciousness of entire civilizations. The Void Devourer's primary processing facility hung in the spaces between realities like a massive tumor of crystallized thought. Its structure defied description. Surfaces that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously, corridors that led through the memories of dead civilizations, and processing chambers where the consumed consciousness of billions was refined into new predator entities. Admiral Cross stood on the bridge of the Righteous Fury *, studying the tactical display with the calm expression of someone who had seen too many battles. Around the facility, the remaining Void Devourer forces had gathered for their species' final stand, a defensive formation of entities so alien that human sensors had difficulty maintaining locks on targets that phase-shifted through multiple reality states. Final count, Admiral, reported Commander Sterling from his reconnaissance position. Estimated 4.7 billion individual consciousness fragments being processed, plus their entire remaining dimensional fleet. This is everything they have left. Cross nodded slowly. And this is where we end it. All ships assume final attack formation. Prepare the consciousness bombs. The human fleet spread throughout the dimensional nexus in a formation that had been planned for weeks. Every ship knew its role. Every weapon had been calibrated for maximum effectiveness against exotic targets. The consciousness-based weapons developed by Dr. Reyes and the ethereal scientists were loaded into specialized delivery systems that could exist across multiple reality states simultaneously. On Zephyria, High Counselor Literally watched the distant battle through long-range consciousness detectors, her awareness heavy with the knowledge of what was about to happen. The gentle ethereals had never witnessed the complete destruction of an entire species, and the concept troubled her deeply despite the necessity. "Is there truly no other way?" she asked Dr. Reyes, who had remained on the station to monitor the final assault. Dr. Reyes's expression was grim. "The Void Devourers have consumed 23 civilizations, High Counselor. They don't negotiate, they don't retreat, and they don't stop. If we don't end this here, they'll spread across the entire galaxy until nothing conscious remains." "All ships, weapons free," Admiral Cross commanded, her voice carrying across the quantum communications network to every human vessel. "Remember, we're not just fighting for the ethereals, we're fighting for every thinking being in this galaxy." The battle that followed would be remembered as the moment when Earth announced its presence to the cosmos. Human warships dove into dimensions that existed between thoughts and dreams, their weapons carving through reality itself to reach an enemy that had never known defeat. The consciousness bombs detonated in perfect synchronization, their quantum payloads tearing through the Void Devourers' shared awareness like fire through dry grass. Millennia of accumulated consciousness, the stolen thoughts of billions, suddenly erupted back into the quantum foam, creating feedback loops that collapsed the processing facility's dimensional anchors. "Direct hit on primary target," Commander Sterling reported, his voice tight with satisfaction. "The facility is collapsing across all 17 dimensions." The Void Devourers' death screams echoed through spaces that existed between realities, a sound like the universe itself crying out in pain. But it was the sound of justice, the final cry of a predator species that had fed on innocence for too long. When the dimensional storms finally cleared, nothing remained of the Void Devourers except dissipating energy patterns and the liberated consciousness of their victims, finally free to return to the eternal quantum dance of the cosmos. Admiral Cross stood on her bridge, watching the tactical display confirm what every sensor was telling them: complete elimination of hostile forces. The galaxy was safe. High Counselor Lirelai, Cross transmitted to Zephyria, "The threat has been neutralized. Your people can return to their worlds in peace." The response came through harmonics heavy with gratitude and wonder. "Admiral Cross, how can we ever repay such a debt? You have saved not just our civilization, but countless others who would have fallen to the Void Devourers." Cross smiled, the expression softening her battle-hardened features. "You don't owe us anything, High Counselor. You reached out for help, and we answered. That's what civilized beings do for each other." As the human fleet prepared to return to Earth, Dr. Reyes transmitted one final message to the ethereals. "The galaxy is vast and dangerous, but it's also full of wonders. Your people chose peace over violence, harmony over conquest. Don't let this experience change that. The universe needs more civilizations like yours, not fewer." Months later, as Earth's ships finally emerged from hyperspace in the Sol system, Admiral Cross reflected on what they had accomplished. They had traveled across the galaxy to save complete strangers, faced an enemy that consumed consciousness itself, and emerged victorious. But more importantly, they had proven that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their weapons or their tactical brilliance. It was their willingness to stand up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves. The ethereals would remember this day for millennia to come, not as the day they were saved by warriors from a distant death world, but as the day they learned that even in the darkest corners of the galaxy, there were those who would answer a cry for help. And in the depths of space, other civilizations monitoring the quantum resonance networks had witnessed something unprecedented, a species so dangerous they could annihilate consciousness-eating predators, yet so compassionate they would cross the galaxy to protect strangers. Humanity had announced itself to the cosmos, not as conquerors, but as guardians. The Deathworlders had answered the call, and the galaxy was forever changed.